Hey people, this is Moot Vince, the mootin' bitch. And this represents the young, green mother of your children. A Saturday morning, still in her nightgown, her hair in the rollers. And she's throwing a double left-handed curse on you, 'cause you just showed up with all your drunk buddies 6 o'clock in the morning thinking you're going fishing. You see here the moot, they say, is mother. And that'll be just this single bird here is a moot. And there's a lot of letters they don't pronounce when they interpret. And this is surely where the old moody moot come from. You shall surely die, you be moody moot. But she's also called widget, which has a better pronunciation I found in here, known as the Eye of Horus. The widget, the green one, and known to the Greek world as Utu, Jutu, Utu. And this is that symbol of the T in the egg that you see always with the feminine that's here. And this actually is the same as the Ankh. It's written different, so it reads different in different directions. And Butu, that's surely where the Hebrew word for daughter come from. But this a better spelling here, would be W-A-C-H, to watch it. Watch it. Be a better pronunciation. And you can see that spelling here, the U-A-T-C-H-E-T, the watch it. And this is a wat. Or as a goddess, it's N-E-T-E-R-L, netral, ineternal. Lucky bought me this book, so I assumed that meant she was interested. And I am too. And so I've been reading on this, and it really helps figure out the Hebrew. They're about the same time, the same writers, and a lot of the words are the same, but some words are total opposite, and that moot's one of them. Changing from the mother, moot, the moot to be. She's going to be deaf. Mu meaning waters, and M from what, where life comes from what. And so it kind of changed it, the opposite from life to death. And you see these words for brother and sister, sin and sent. It's the same as in the Hebrew if you just exchange this S for a B. It makes me think that they're mistaking this S and B. So this all comes from an older book from a Frenchman back in the 1800s. And it was said to be the first one to break down this Egyptian language. And he did it by matching up names. But the French, they don't pronounce stuff right either. So we could probably change some of these letters. And there's a lot of clues in there to tell where and which. So they'll say this neb, just the NB means Lord, and the neb, the T underneath, means lady. And that's going to come up later. But this is the MUT and the NTBX. It's the mutant bitch. And you see here that they twisted these letters here. And so this is the way ancient poetry worked. Before it was spoken, it was visual, and you see the poetry, although you don't hear it. So you might be reading this as, from what, and then BN, in a portion of time, Ben, and then TTS, from what Ben Tits is, the one that nursed you, mother, and mutant bitch. So this sedge here, it represents the letter X in all languages. And sometimes they'll give it the TS, and sometimes they'll give it a CH. They'll give it the SU, or the zoo. When you see her come up inside this neb, sometimes they'll call it the Lord of Crowns. They don't know how it was pronounced. Sometimes they'll say it's of the north and south. Sometimes they'll use this sign, or other similars. When it looks like this and they're both in neb, they're not sure about how to pronounce that. But they'll say it's the uniter of the north and south. And it made me think about, and the serpent says to the woman, the moot, from what, the mother to be. And I thought it might help me to figure this word out. To look over here in Genesis 3:4, where it's, and said the serpent to the woman. Not surely you will die. There's the moody mootin'. So the biggest difference between the Hebrew and Egyptian is word any. Any is said to be the scribe, the one that wrote the book of the dead was Annie. But here it's I am when God's speaking. And what this says is who am, am, a conjugation of to be. And who am, rule him that, ought, have writ, the British, B-R-I-T, the Brit, the British. And so who have ought, have writ, Asher, that's the little Egyptian symbol that looks like a man or a woman, and any, Asher, any, sir, a sir, any, the writer, the note, the notin, the writer notin. So in the Book of the Dead, any is said to be a proper name, but you can see that they're not reading half of it. And just the on is just the scribe's tools. And on any let, break into. Ooh, don't make me break out some whoop ass on any let this can of whoop come out on. But you see most of this book it'll say from the papyrus of any. I am the scribe. The hymn to Osiris from I am. The hymn to Ra from I am. And a prayer to the gods of the underworld from I am. Or to address the gods of judgment from the papyrus of Nubzeni. So Nubzeni would be written like any, but it would be in a nub. And here in the Book of the Dead, I am is Nyuk. Nyuk, nub, ben nubbin next. Nyuk, ben nubbin next. Nyuk, I am. And I've only heard that, 3 times in my life. One of them's curly. Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. And the other is Popeye. I am what I am. Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. And the other is an old guy that I work for, and he didn't have any education. And I'm going to have to get a hold of him and see what nyuk means to him. So in Egypt, you often see this serpent. It looks like this with legs. And just this part up front, this represents Ren. You often see it with little bitty wings. And it's a hidden part in many signs, the Ren. And it's where your word children come from. And it's where the word render comes from. It looks like this in basic, it's the Ren. And it's the winged serpent, little bitty wings up here. And then had his legs removed. It's the Egyptian word for name is a Ren. In your children, the yield comes from the woman. The yield is the Hebrew word for the child, and the Ren is the name of the father. The Ren, where that comes from. And with the T, it's the rent. With the R, it's the renter. And with the P, it's the remp. And I believe most of the time they'll read like this with a P before it. It's where your word the parent comes from. The parent, the children. And you see it here, RN, meaning the name. It's actually the Ren ask, the name ask. To ask in her, the name asking her, the Ren. And you see it in this word for the year. There's no P here. They're mistaken. But it's the rent, R-E-N-T-R, the renter. And so it means, the name to mark first, the renter. And so when you see times written, the year will be written first. That's what that says. The name to mark first is the renter. And sometimes you'll see it with up. And this is her legs up. And this is the masculine, the rent up. When the rent's up. And this can go 2 different ways. It could be upper end or the rent up. This is where rent of as turn, T-U-R-N. Where is rent of his turn? It's like there's 3 girls staying together and the landlord comes to collect. They each take a turn. They interpret this as the periods are as years, many of names. You see here, they just read these 2 letters, and it's the Ren ask, N-R. The name asking her, and then as R-N-T, as renter, as the renter, as or ASR. And so Ren, being the year, that would be asking the age. So when the serpent says to the woman, if you just read the letters with none of the directional markings, YM wrenches, RENCHS, who am wrenches all? So who am wrenches all? They'll tell you that wrenches is first used in 1790, meaning turning or twisting. And so everything Wikipedia tells you is a lie. They don't know. Who am turning wrenches all? Who am turning all has the limit. The limit, time it when. Who is turning all has the limit, time it when. When surely she will die, is the limit of the time it when. You can see there, the mutant. And so the mutant is your stomach. When you've been out drinking all night, the mutant bitch is your stomach. It's your lower intestine making all that noise from whatever you ate and drank. It's the mutant bitch inside of you cussing back. From what bent. Bent is your daughters created. From what bent it's. Bentix. The mutant bitch. She making all kind of racket. Well, I really shouldn't have drank that. And so, who am, and I am, the wrenches is turns, and it's the Ren, the name has, because the name keeps turning, the name has all. No, the one that knows everything, knows all the names, the words, the meaning of the signs, and who wrenches all has the limit, time it when. And so it's talking about several things. And when it's talking about the gods, it always talks about them as men and women and some mutants. And this tells me that when the serpent was talking to the snake, it was in the time of the mutage. Now this means the dead names, but mute didn't always mean the dead. And then when this artwork was made, you can see the center here, and it was the time of Taurus and Crata. And this is the gate here. All the planets that come across this plane and pass through this gate between these two star groups. And this is all comes, ALCHMS, all comes, and they'll all pass through here. This is what we call the Pleiades, and it's where your word Cratic come from, the governor. And it was the Crata in the Indian astrology and other places. And then here you have the circuit. And this is the circuit that's going to go around in the circuit, And these are waiting up next. And these are mute in the past. And you see Horus holding the Ren. And this is the Ain. And this is Suri. This is the same as the name of Sarah and change her name. And this means Surah. They say princes. It means will be. The Surah top. And then the writer scribed his name here, On. And don't confuse with Ain, that A-I-N. The same as the Hebrew for not, ain't. It's where your word ain't come from, ancient Hebrew word, not, neither, nor, ain, not. And so there's so many ains in here. This is like it's probably the 10 Commandments. I haven't seen on spelt like this in this book yet, but this is the answer to a question of when, at what time, WN is when, and the hand and the working, is the time on this date. And I only find it like that when it's mixed in other words. I have to restart my computer to see if the search is going to work where I downloaded this. But you can see it here, this is an on and Setsum, and this is a next on. This is an arm, and he's got his money in his hand. He's got his food in his hand. Whatever's in his hand is next going in his mouth. If he's going into the whorehouse, he's got his money in his hand. He's next. And let's say that's an NXT, the next on, the next in. And they got it confused here with annexed in. Somewhere the N comes before, and then it's annexed. Rising up and gaining possession. They annexed them. But this is, Onsetsum next in line. So it was a Frenchman that first set these letters here, they say in the 1800s. And he did it by looking at Greek spellings and comparing it to cartouches, just the letters that he could find in cartouches of the names. But I'm pretty sure he's got some mistakes in there between his French and to the Greek and to the ancient Celtic that was on the tomb. And you see a lot of words with the A's in them. Sometimes there's 4 A's in a row and very few L's. And when an L does come up, they have to draw the entire picture of a lion. And it just doesn't make sense. RSTLNE, those have to be easy letters. R, S, and T, and N. But they use the entire picture of the lion for the L. And I'm pretty sure they got that wrong. I believe this replaces 4 letters. The L-I-O-N means to lie on. And there's some other letters in here that are L. And I believe this bird here, this is the L, as in full. I've had it up to here, full, carry. And so it causes a lot of these other words to be off too. You see how they'll spell a boat with a U-A-A. They give this a U and both of these A instead of a all, A-W-L. And so all these words, they'll have them pronounced wrong. They put extra A's in them. It turns the love into ob. This A-A-U-I that can't be pronounced, meaning to praise, is all who is high. A-L-W-Y, why, who, why, how, or who. All who is H, hands up, H-I, high, will, Ashu. Come back and get this S-H-U here. Ash was the Celtic god, the one they're praising. All who is high will Ashu. And so you don't see it in a lot of these words because they have other symbols. And when they were pronouncing these symbols, they had the bird L in them. And so they come through as A. So you don't see them in these symbols, but in the pronunciation it's been changed. And so this Amenta, the hidden place, in the books of Thoth, he says Amenta, his halls, his heaven. And so it's not Amenta, it's a mental. It's in a mental place, the hidden place. And the meow lion, it says the meow, to lie on, and then whim, the meow, the cat, lion, whim. Just out of nowhere, he just lays down. Meow, lion, whim. And you'll see it all throughout here. They'll give different lion creatures the meaning to lie down. And you can see it here in this plural hearts, 3 of them, Nobody has plural hearts. They have plural loves. And so anytime you see these words doubled up like that, it's going to be missing half the word. This is A-M-R. And this is a R-U, a Maru. And it's letting you know that this is also a Maru, M-R times 3 adds the U. And so it's not Maru, but it's a Moru, which is the same word for love all across the Med. And in here too, they'll give the amor, the meaning love. And also this letter T, they have a lot of letters T where they'll stack up 3 or more T's together, and it looks a whole lot like the Hebrew L, or the tongue, and I'm pretty sure that's a L too. You see it in this word here, they'll say this is 3 different T's, and there's several other letters they use for T. So there's huge parts of this, it's easy to read. It's plainly an Aryan language. It says it in here, spells it out, Aryan. And this is the THT, that connect. That connect, thou exist, thou art, is that connect. And then the next line down, they'll say the pat is now a cake. I'm sure that's where patty cake come from. but it's now, a O-P, that upon, and Tuten, T-U-T-N, Tuten. Tutankhamun, Tuten actually means common, means like the rest of them, Tuten. And that upon Tuten, and sets with. And so these walking feet down here, I give them an LT, and they'll even say that it's anything to be done with the feet, to step, or to send, or to arrive, or to just stand. But the way I see this is, they don't pronounce this, they just say it's a determinative. They're just reading this at A-H-A-L-T. But I see it as halt. Company, halt. You just stand there. And in the royal family, your brother was also your cousin. Thy. T-H-Y, you can see it here. Thy cousin. And so the reason everybody hates the Masons is because I have made them to see the Mason. I made them to look upon. And you can see this, I made them, is a pyramid. I'm pretty sure they got that T messed up too. And made them to look upon thy majesty. And so that's why the pyramids were created. Look upon thy majesty. And the offerings are made to God, every in proportion as they are made, is the Aryan. And made the soldiers, or the airy men fit to. The hairy men fit to. That's some Aryans. They're all kind of hairy. That's why they shave their heads so they don't get lost. And made his majesty is the Aryan bat was what at. The Aryan bat was at. The bat, this is the thing that all the queens carry. And to do unto him every, is are enough bunnin, B-U-N-B, the bunnin. That's where your word bono comes from. Bonus, more than you paid for, are enough for boning. So they tell me I got to restart my computer to get the search working on this program. I had to load to make this work, this Adobe Digital Editions. And it seems like they sent me a different book than I was reading online. But I wanted to finish where I was reading somewhere I found where it's talking about in it hurl. And it was saying, that, when it hurl, that final T is an L. But it was written somewhere with a longer God's name and read backwards and forwards. And it was talking about throwing something at him. This U doesn't belong here. This U belongs when there's three. And in it turn, it hurl. But this is a huge book. I'm going to have to finish this up and restart my computer before this starts working, hopefully. And so it's a good book. I don't recommend it, mainly because when I had to load it, as soon as I did, it sent me to Google Play reading page, and I lost all my options to search. I lost everything on that Google Play, and all my other books on Google Books were forced to go to that Google Play. I had to work a while to figure out how to get off of Google Play and get back to this sample edition. But this Google Play, it only gives you the option to blow up the text, and none of the search is recognizing any of these words here, and so it won't expand. This is what I'm not liking about it. And it seems like they sent another book. I see some differences in there. But you see these gods' names come up several times like this, with this at the end. It's a loaf, the T. They say it's a loaf. And this is an egg. It's an ova, O-V-E-O-V-I-O-B-I-O. And so what you're looking at when you're reading into this, and after you read, the on, and they say this is a T and I, they say it's a fire. And when I think of fire, I think of S, not T. The fire hisses, and on sit of O-V, and then I, and then netter of in it, her. And then when you're reading it back the other way, this is a O-V-I and a T. and it's a obit. And that's what I was saying. The Ankh is a obit. It means of it. And it's what Ankh represents a mirror, and you see in it. O-B-I-T means to see in it, and it's of it. It's the egg, the feminine. All the Egyptians say this is feminine. It's of it. Of it is in. On sight of it in it, her, of it is in. And this is where your word Ankh comes from right here. And they got it confused because this is the Ankh. And this is on fit of it in is her, of it, obit. The Ankh is the obit, of it, finish. And this is to let as all set of in it, here of its less alt, L-A-S-A-L-T, less alt, less height. And it's depending on where you find it, where sometimes the L-T or just the T reads with whatever's coming after. So my program's jamming up. I'm going to have to finish this up here. When you look at a cartouche, it looks like a stand-up mirror. And that's what it represents. The same as an Ankh. It represents a mirror. It means to see in it. And so when you see the Ankh, that's what it means. It means turn around, read it the other way. And so this isn't Eunice, but it's when is sinning. And you see it here, cometh forth Eunice upon a ladder, this which hath made for him his father Ra. And so it's Peri, P-R-R, gives an I, and Peri, around. And when is sinning, here make the ladder, that enforces my theory that this is a L, the LD in the ladder or the letter, the latched in, the written, a written, hath made for him is a written, in written is the same in the Hebrew. When he made a covenant for him, it was in writ, the British, Brit in writ, means a legal paper. But this program's jamming up. I'm going to have to cut this off here. But yeah, this is the two F's. These are the horned serpents. This is a F-U-F, the foofer of in. You see their two left hands. All right, good day.